Minutes. Here we go. Hey guys, this is us, Reimagining Wealth Initiative. We're here starting to, in the end of this year, right? Starting to record our sessions again after eons not recording it. And we have a lot of things to share with everybody that's going to visualize this further about our intentions to 2024 and our findings during this year, or what we learned about ourselves, about the things that we're doing all over. And it's going to be nice to hear a little bit from everyone here, including me, of course. And so let's just start doing what we don't do. That is to make check-ins. So this thing about check-ins and checkouts, it's so current on the culture of disruptive and transitional things, and we don't do that. So let's begin not doing what we don't do. So let's not do a check-in. let's see who wants to come out and start sharing a little bit about this experience that we have weekly here. So feel free for who wants to start, and let's go for it.
Someone go.
I am.
Oh, I was talking. I wanted to break the silence. Sorry about that. I was muted.
Oh my God.
I'm happy to go back to the topic, and there's a lot of things that happened this year. Meandered. I don't know. Sometimes this gathering was more personal, more sort of interpersonal support. We also discussed some very interesting topics, new developments, but would be refreshing to touch base and go back to the original topic a little bit. About myself, well, this is Canada today, very snowy Montreal. Woke up an hour ago, had my coffee, ready to go, and yeah, happy to have this conversation.
Nice. The snow's melted here now. I think it was the same snowfall, but it's melted. It's a bit warmer down here.
I spotlight you, Stefan. I think.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was just taking a little bit of time to ground, and thanks for that, Tiberius. It's actually, that was really nice seeing. I think that whole piece about grounding ourselves is one of the things that's been important, be it in the US, in the Toronto, Montreal, Brazil, but what that even means. And I think there's been some nice realization of synergies in areas which I don't know about for others, but maybe is normally seen as the fringe area that we see a lot of excitement in, but struggle to find other people who have necessarily probed those thoughts, if that makes sense. So I think that's been really cool. I've found what's been really valuable in that is sort of trying to move over some of these kind of like stuck points of where we've got different things that we're trying to achieve, which are probably, a lot of people would think it's a bit too ambitious in some ways, right? So we had that and in some ways they're right, and there will be bits of it which are, that's by the nature of it. So, but there's also stuff which can be made possible if enough. There's almost like enough key insights start to simplify things in a way, simplify how to access the complexity in a funny sort of way, you know. So it's like, so that's been really good. I had a chance to connect and talk about that, and we've been doing the stuff with Tiberius as well regarding the Internet of Production Alliance, and as you were doing, Vinicius, and that was really, really useful, because there's something really particular. I think one of the things that keeps coming up is scale, what scale we're working at, right? So there's one thing, if I'm working at, you know, people often want to push me towards a therapeutic one-on-one. That's actually kind of where the PhD was sort of, you know, or a small group work. And I want it to be like, how could this inform? Well, for me, the ambition was just to inform local community-based organizations and their staff, right? Which normally, they normally get all their, you know, they get things given to them to roll out. We call it rollout, and the rollout's normally coming from somewhere, right? So I think what I like about what we're trying to do is we are working across some different scales, and it's a little lot easier if you just stick to your one scale. But I think that's where, well, A, there's people doing that. They could do it better, but you know, you could say it's relatively okay. The challenge is moving between or through different scales, or thinking like we are in different places. And I think that's been really cool, because I think our conversation does that regularly, right? It's not like it's a wacky thing that happens once in a while and it's like gone down a rabbit hole. It's like that feels like something in the ground, right? So anyway, that's probably a bit abstract, but that kind of questioning, and the question is, of course, how to bring others on that journey now. That was one of the things. It's like, okay, they're not necessarily, it's not like I'm making a church here and expect everyone to come and be like us, right? Then some people just aren't as interested in that. But for a period of time, when it's useful, how can we get them to sort of come into that space and take something which is going to be useful either to them or someone else? You know, how can that be done in a way that's going to really make change in the world? Because, you know, that's ultimately what this is all about, right? We're trying to do stuff where it makes a difference beyond what's currently out there. And that's where we talk about, I think there's a similarity, but a different way of getting there to some of the sort of stuff that Nora Bateson's talking about, right? The sort of intentionality that Nora Bateson's talking about, we're sort of coming at it from maybe a more practice-based, activity-based way, you know, than a little bit less philosophical. Yeah, so that's me complete for now.
Laureen, do you want to weigh in a little bit?
You can go first.
What?
You go.
Okay. Well, guys, you see, we are getting aware as a species that we live in extremely complex world, extremely complex. And for me, we are doing without being aware of it, we're doing a movement that transcends the initial societal matrix that we co-created as a species to organize ourselves. What I'm saying is, we relied on control, cybernetically speaking, on the first order, and we talk about this, we rely on controlling, planning and controlling things. We want to plan and control things, to expect outcomes that can, where its feedback can inform or can nurture let's put it this way, the actual thing that we want to prototype or materialize as reality, right? And we've been doing this, especially since last century. We've been doing this in a massive scale, and we are relying on huge systems, on macro systems. So and this systems, this way of systems doing, or systems thinking and systems doing thing, necessarily needs a macro narratives, because we are storytellers. We are essentially storytellers, right? And so in order for this to, this huge systems, economically, politically, in terms of religion too, in order to stay together, we need to ratify daily the expected, the macro narrative that it's out there in all societies. It differs, of course, in terms of, because different languages, different cultures, but the macro narrative that the possibility of what we live in our daily lives is negotiated, or is, let's say, by this huge organizations like the nation states, like corporations, or even big religions, monotheistic or not, big religions. I think that this comes to a halt. Like we are on the threshold to question this, to really question, maybe not in the macro way, but in the very specific micro way, in the sense that the so-called meta crisis of meaning, or whatever people are calling it, it has a direct relationship with this thing, right? And once more, it's not something that everybody is aware of. On the contrary, in my perspective, huge amounts of people are not, right? And the recent experience of the COVID-19 with the pandemic, where we generate some cracks and fissure on this machinery, economic, political, macroeconomic, macro-political machinery, some cracks, some fissures, unexpected cracks and fissures, right? Put a lot of people like us very, very aware, more aware that we were already, to even energize, even to enhance our efforts, to gather more people, to generate more contexts, to do all sorts of transitions to new paradigms, right? But at the same time, there was a huge amount, massive amount of people that just wanted to come back to the normality, to that normal lives, what they considered to be normal, right? So what I'm saying is that the COVID-19 broke something that was thought or felt like unbreakable. Like you can't you can't just broke something that all our species fetch together as a civilizational matrix, and that's it. A virus did the work, but not the virus itself, right? Because we did the work too. We generate all sorts of disinformation pandemics, and we start to question these macro narratives, the scientific one, for instance, right? And we know that is related to the algorithmical, not totally, but a great part of it, to the algorithmical way that Web 2 encompass us as in our daily lives, in the sense that the algorithm, with this attention economy, microeconomy, so you tend to do things that you maybe in your physical peer-to-peer life, that TB is now experimenting with the new location of the lab. You tend not to polarize the way that we polarize on social media. So in part there's that, right? In part there's that too, and it's a huge thing, right? It's not a little, it's not something that we can ignore, right? But at the same time, paradoxically speaking, we are cybernetic beings. We are, in that sense, we have the capability to be not only aware of it, but to deconstruct it, to deprogram it, or to, to have a critical, not only a critical way of looking at it, but a critical way to rehash it, resignify it. So we have this potential, right? Because we are cybernetic beings, in my understanding. And so that's it. We started talking still remember, TB, Lauding wasn't still with us in that time in the first sync ups, in the first touchdowns that we're doing. We were still talking into the societal frame, what we can resignify as wealth. Remember that? But differently from when we started, this civilizational framework is collapsing, is fissured, is so. So in this sense, even what could be considered wealth in this so profound transitional places that we find ourselves in, where is a mixture of something extremely personal and intimate for you, or that you value a lot, like family, like kids, like close friends, and at the same time, something extremely present in your life, but distant, like climate change, like a hyper, when we talk about hyper objects, like this hyper object that you can't touch because it's not an object, it's all over around you. So in this type of context, it is a intercontextual thing where we have to dealt with ourselves and dealt with this all of this different types of hyper objects. And I just give the example of the climate change. Is the actual context that we are making the conversations, experimentations around what we could consider wealth in this very transitional times that we live in. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Lauding, I don't know if you felt like there's some type of bullshit on this, but yeah, that's and I say this. I know that you guys know what I'm going to say now. I say this coming from, not only coming from the heart, but coming from my very essence of my existence, because that's how I feel things, and that's how I feel and live through things in my day-to-day things. So here we go.
TB?
Yeah, I already did it. I don't know if you want to do your check-in.
Finished. That was your check-in?
Mm-hmm.
You just showed us the snow.
Sorry?
You just showed us the snow.
Oh no. Well, I could say something if you're not ready. I had it's related to wealth and wealth generation. I had 3 wonderful days in Quebec City, going to a spa, no phone, just for an hour for a meeting. I cheated, but had some time to decompress, take a step back, and had some realizations. And one of them was that in terms of wealth generation, for the past 2 years, we went through some tensions while interfacing with some traditional organizations. And the pattern is that there is a productivity-oriented traditional organization that passes something to us to do, and then we try to put in place processes to fit that productivity model, be efficient, deliver what they want within a certain period of time, within some budget. And we had some tension that I'm now realizing that it's something that is deep, and essentially there is no tension, but the thing is that we need to realize who we are and find our niche, and find a proper way to speak about the capabilities of these open networks and their role in society. So what I realized was that once you set up a goal within an open network, inevitably what happens is that there's a lot of people that come with good ideas, and expand the scope of the initial requirement. Obviously, when you're interfacing with productivity-oriented organizations, that expansion of the scope, that burst of creativity, seems as something that is taking time, taking you off course, pulls you away from achieving the initial goal, and the immediate reaction is to put things back on track. But going through these situations, we were very fortunate to have people like Vinny, who is always an expanding mind, and people like Tim, who is somebody that is able to read the situation and reposition ourselves. And we went through it. So what I realized is that I can't talk about all the open networks, but especially ours. I think our role is creativity. I think our role is thinking outside of the box, and there's very few breaks for reaching high creativity levels. And every project that we took on, we deliver much more than was expected. We even reframed the initial call, and sometimes I feel that we even did it abusively, meaning that we went back and said, the question that you're asking us is not even the right question. If you really think about it, here's another question that is most probably what you are looking for. Okay, so I came to this realization that maybe we should better communicate the nature of these networks and their capability, Our value proposition is give us something and allow enough time for wonderful things to emerge. Deal with us if you're not constrained by time, if you're not productivity oriented, but you're creativity oriented, and we can deliver very well. I I think that once we realize that, we also need to think about these methodologies to how to encapsulate our deliverables in a way that the value that we provide is perceived. Okay. So somebody told me that we failed in some projects because we didn't deliver in time, and my answer was yes, and no. Yes, in a productivity-minded world, yes, we didn't follow the schedule, and we didn't deliver what we were asked to deliver. But in a creativity-oriented world, we did a wonderful job because we went to the limits of our capacity of our network to explore and to bring in out-of-the-box ideas. So how do we communicate that? How do we encapsulate our? That's what I'm focusing on now. How do we encapsulate what we achieved in order to communicate that? Okay, to say, don't judge us according to productivity metrics. Try to judge our role using creativity metrics. And in the future, know that this is what we're capable of and this is what we're good at. Don't put ourselves into this little productivity box where we have to just check a task, you know. Yeah, so in terms of wealth generation, this is our niche, I think. And there may be networks that are more productivity oriented and geared, designed, architectured for creativity, like checking tasks, you know. But ours, the way it is set up, I think we fit into the other model. You know, so that's the type of wealth we create. Is in that domain, right? And in being able to sort of go beyond the the paradigm. You know, take it further. Take it beyond the imagination. Maybe that's one way to put it.
Yeah, you were talking, and I was imagining. I don't know, TB, if exactly what you're thinking and the projects itself, but I know that it's not only related to IOPA, right? I know that there's briefing games, there's a lot of other things happening. So, yeah, very interesting, my friend, share that you just did there. And we can, of course, make a lot of conversations around, but yeah, I'm crazy to hear Louding, so I think we are all crazy to hear you, Louding.
Oh, I'm just thinking about like the year and how we've sort of been, it feels like we've been in hibernating phase for a while. Just kind of going through our winter, and I'm just wondering what it would be like to be in summer together. And so if we, you know, took what we had and made it more dynamic, I'm just like trying to figure out what that would look like and what are some of the ideas that popped up that we can go further with. And
the audio is not so great, Louding. Your audio is not so
What?
great. Yeah, your audio is not so great. We're not
Oh,
hearing
here,
you.
let me. Was I sounding like an alien from space? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, we can hear you now.
your sound was fading away and coming back, right, guys? And basically that. Like you're talking and you're fading and you're coming.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, totally. It's better.
Okay, yeah, that sometimes that's been happening with my headphones. So I was just wondering, like, we've come up with like a lot of ideas and stuff, and I think it'd be pretty fun to start testing these ideas and fleshing them out. And I would just be, interested in hearing what if our meetings became more vibrant, what would that look like, and what could we do, and what would make us proud to have done at this time next year? What would we like to do together?
Yeah, but you know, we have been doing a lot of you and TB, for instance. You guys have been not only talking but co-creating things together. Um, Not only when you were starting some research or whatever for whatever project you want to make, Loading. Yeah, I remember you. Hey TB, when we end up here, let's continue here. Do some conversation. So I think that we went way further of just talking about ideas and making conversations around. We already doing experimentations, loads of them, and for instance, was it is interesting to see how old this dynamic is because was because of what we're doing here, RWI touchdowns, that Taudal became bridged with Sensorica, when intertwined with Sensorica, and we start to prototype a lot of loads of interesting things there. And we didn't really unpack them. Like we make some conversations. I remember you, Laurie, specifically wanting to be invited to our weekly, sync ups. Where for Greens for Good, we're doing this year, initially, and then it came this huge event for Sensorica that was getting out of the old lab and going to the new one, and that interrupted. But it's still vibrating, around us, and I feel that I may be wrong, but I feel that it didn't go away. At least for me, it didn't. Right,
Okay.
and so we're going to regain that. And TB, here we go. Here we go, my friend. Let's see if we can combine for the week that the next week, a touchdown for Taudal Explorers with you and whoever wants to come from Sensoric Environment, just to talk about the experience itself and see how we can further it on through 2024, right? So this is just illustrating how we didn't only talk about ideas, and we really went to the weeds of it, of to putting it on practice, right? So I'm just illustrating that, Lauren. So
what
and I don't know
do
if
you tell me what you practice? Like, yeah, give me more information.
yeah, there's loads of them. And we're not. I think that we are not going to necessarily unpack them today here on this recording. We can talk about it. I think the TB certainly have a lot of things to share about it. By the way, he already shared. I don't remember if we recorded, but he already shared in our weekly RWI touchdowns. He already shared loads of things how this experience was informing Sensorica and was informing, you know, Taudao, and was generating something different there. And yeah, so this is one thing, but there's this collaborative contracting experience with IOPA that is not the one that is paying it. It's another entity that it's paying the experience to make this IOPA thing coming to fruition. And that's a whole another ballgame. And Stefan is part of it too. So there's so much, guys, that we can share about this thing. So and I feel that there's a hunger for this type of experimentation, with this type of, you know, disruptive cultural experimentation that we're doing around, and in so many levels, you know, so many dimensions. And yeah, I just feel that it's going to be interesting for us to do this in a different way that we're doing for the incoming year, and yeah, and see how it goes, because you know, there's a whole bunch of new people that I want to invite to be here with us, and they are going to, you know, and they are already influenced by what we're doing with this experience, right? They are part of it, like the projects that are being part of RWI, this cultural Web3 regenerative protocol that we are co-creating as a cultural blueprint for this emergent Web3 out there, right? So yeah, there's loads of things to share about it.
And one thing I was wondering, can I just ask a quick, like Lauren, when you mentioned, are you thinking maybe something like kind of on top of the stuff that we've already, like Vinicius has explained, which, you know, very articulate, but like something more like, maybe more like practice based, maybe sort of something that actually happens in the session, that we try and do an activity, that we try and do something, and we, like, okay, it's something we can say happened here, you know, like we've something maybe a bit more concrete within the session as an extra, like sort of going beyond or something, because that sounds interesting. Or is that the kind of thing you're thinking?
Each time we talk about this, I bring, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can see you and
Oh,
hear
okay.
you. Yes.
Sorry, I keep putting on my headphones. Yeah, like so if you're going to bring people in, I'd like to offer them something where they feel like, if you bring someone here, I would like them to feel like, wow, this is a special place. So I'm kind of like, say if we have a home together, I'm like, oh, can we like put up some decorations and stuff so that they know that they feel welcome and they know where they are, and can we serve them little snacks? And so I'd like to, each time we have this conversation, I think I bring this up again. But remember the conversational menu that we talked about? I'd actually like to put some things on the menu that we can, like specific things that we can offer to people, so that they, when they come in to our place, we can be like, oh, what kind of conversation would you like to have today? And then we can have options of what we can do with them. So like options that broaden their horizons, that that make it clear to them what can be done in this space. And I think those options,
that goes directly to the ball game that Stefan has been doing with the infusion space. am I right here, Stefan? Like something like that?
Well, I think sort of, but I think what Lauren's talking about is more like art of hosting. It's more like hosting, like some sort of hosting approach. So the infusion space has been a bit of like a journey off, journey back kind of thing, and like a deep dive. So I think that's one of the things within that. But I think what Lauren's saying is almost like some extra parts of the frame to, yeah, something like that, which is good. I mean, I'm wondering, like, there's a couple of things that you can, like, Gather Town is one option, you know, like this sort of immersive chat, or you can have like something like, would you like to do something like in the room, like we actually, like, you see behind me, I've got that green picture on the wall, like you could actually drop stuff into that graphic, right? Or
Right.
like we could have something where we run it through OBS, and it's like there's a main screen where we appear as if it's like a TV studio. If you know what I mean, and each person cuts to them. And that might be a bit extreme, but I don't know if there's some way, or should we do something like the infusion bit that I do think is like you see behind, I've got that you know, the cube there with the stuff on it, like there's the community cube. Like, is it something we could do where there's like the menu literally be like kind of cool, like the menu appears, you know what I mean? Like we actually have something which is a bit more interactive, and we play a bit with the hosting.
Yeah.
Some way.
Yeah. You know how there are things, and so what we all know, and kind of what we've talked about, is that and a lot of people don't think of this way. TB, you're cracking again.
Sorry.
So when you talk in a group, there can be all sorts of things that kind of shut down the conversation, because social norms are so powerful in terms of like giving people the permission or shutting down the permission, so that people look for the social cues and see what they can and can't do. And you know, Vinny likes, as we said before, as TB said before, has a very expansive mind. So my question is like, how can we use the Gather Town and stuff like that, and make the sort of like the art of hosting, how it has some protocols? How can we develop specific protocols that we can follow that have a predictable output? So with Taodao, for example, with the Sensorica Taodao things, it's like a certain culture that develops from those kind of interactions, and it allows certain things to come out. How can we systemize that, and so we can create that kind of culture, and maybe different kinds of cultures that lead to different things, like whether it's like an open, expansive, we're kind of like brainstorming and doing whatever here, or is this like a critical moment when you need some black hat like critiques of something that you're trying to do. So there are different kind of conversations that we can have, and we move through these now quickly because we're friends and we know each other, but maybe we can systemize these things so that we can get into those conversations with someone else in the room, so they can be familiar with the informal rules that exist. So we basically can recreate that culture very quickly. Does that make any sense? And so it doesn't have to be like one thing that we do or one culture. We can do many things, and that's why it's like, why I'm saying like it's a menu, like a Gather Town. Maybe if we looked at it like a Gather Town, we could have several different rooms that we could go into, but maybe each of those rooms are a very different style of room that lead to a different outcome?
That here in Zoom we have the breakout rooms, right? We can. I understood, Lauren, totally what you said. Each breakout room can have, a different mood to it, or a different,
Right.
conversation to it. Yeah, that's interesting, really interesting. You see, this is something. What you're saying is very interesting, and I'm going to say why I feel. You said this. You proposed something similar a while, but at the time we are just starting to do the things that we did, and it didn't felt like at least for me, it didn't felt like the time for us to embrace it. But now, since we've done so much things in different contexts, with so much different people, and it feels like this type of approach, this proposal that you're laying out again, but in a different, with different textures, in a different sense, it makes a lot of sense, because I remember that we talked about this, even with that friend of yours that I forgot his name, from New York, that has that platform. Vince. Yes. What is the name of the platform? I really forgot it.
It popped out on my email 2-3 days ago, because there was one Sensorican that went on to some other projects that just boomerang back, and he was saying that him and his colleagues now would like to use Vince's platform. What was it? Trove.
Yeah, Trove. That's it.
But Trove was just was not the platform. Actually, the platform is there's another name for the platform, but Trove was used when we were talking
Trove,
about it.
Yeah.
Trove is not the platform.
Catalyst.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the case for us to reconnect with him, and once we did some deep dives with him. Remember, Elodie? We really did some deep dives, and he was really open and interested in it. And I think that we even talked about what you just lay out first, something like that, like to. So I think that I feel, because at the time we were, remember, Stefan wasn't with us yet was Tim and people coming from, and that guy from Tanzania, I forgot his name, Metodo, I forgot his name. He's in Sensorica's environment, right? And from Tanzania, and Unai, yeah. We were starting to do an interface with the Gitcoin ecosystem. Remember that first experimentation that we done together? We tried to establish some type of coordination with the different initiatives. So we were very entranced to do that, and so we were not really looking. We became the tunnel vision thing, Lauren, the tunnel vision, like, well, let's do this. So we really didn't give the time to look around and populate the Catalyst platform with the ideas that you lay out. And so I think that, I feel that now is the time. Now I felt, at least me, guys, I don't know how TB and Stefan is, because Stefan didn't have that experience that we had, right? And I feel that it's a time for us to do something like that, Lauren. I really feel.
So I propose something here, because now we know more about, since we started, there's a new technology that just blew up in our face, like ChatGPT and stuff, so what I suppose that what we were trying to do was to co-create something, build a commons, right, of a new understanding, and reframe, I don't know, wealth and wealth generation, new types of wealth, among other subjects that we spoke about. We were trying to build these commons and then provide access to other people to navigate the commons. share it, make it available. And the way we normally do that is that you capture stuff. So you record videos, you process transcripts. Then you to make it more accessible, I was trying to take some sound bites and publish. So I did that for a while. These are pieces of the conversation that I thought are really interesting for people to see, and then go and dive deeper somewhere. And with the Trove thing, I guess we were trying to also structure these commons, make it put it in a format so people can navigate it and do something, build something on top of that. But here's the thing. I think now with AI, we have a very natural way of doing that. So in the last conversation last week, Lauren, she was talking about personalizing an AI. What I'm thinking now is that we can take all the transcripts that of all the video that we've recorded and feed it into AI and make a chatbot that speaks like us, make a chatbot that represents that commons. But instead of people having to look for documents and watch videos, and they just ask the question. So it's a more natural way into these commons based on a specific need at a particular time. You see, by training an AI. So you have humans exploring, using their minds to explore the new possibilities. Okay. And then you render that not as a document or as videos, but you render that as an all integrated synthesis, which is an AI chatbot, right? And you just let people interact with it. You see, so you don't have to bring them into a virtual environment. You don't have to have them navigate documents and open and watch videos. You see what I'm saying? and look and spend hours and hours and hours to find one answer to their problems. So you see what I'm saying? So that's our collective intelligence that is rendered, okay, by a neural network, synthesized, right?
Yeah, that's amazing, TV, because we were, when I say we, I'm not referring exactly for us here, but we, as that experience of the E2GLADS, the experimental local station, we were trying to do that before the explosion of this large language model with ChatGPT, with how I say, that's IVA, intelligence, artificial. I forgot the name. Is in English is IVA. Using open IVAs for the E2C token. Remember, I think I talked with you guys about this. We're trying to pick up all the language, all the experiences, all the way to talk about, the trails, the open initiatives that were happening through the years, through the global experimental station, E2GLADS, and try to put that on this IVA thing. That is not this type of technology that's out there now. So it makes a lot of sense, GB, for us to do this, because we actually have more than 100 recorded. If we didn't record loads of things, but we have almost more than 100 recordings that we've done around this thing here. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I think the Lauren agrees too, and I don't know what is the take of Stefan, but yeah, I count me in. Let's do this. I totally agree, TD.
So what questions could it ask? Or could someone ask this chatbot?
Like somebody that didn't participate to these discussions, what kind of needs or question he could have?
Yeah.
I don't know, something about governance, something about organizational structures. I'm doing this. What are the new organizational structures that I could use? Or I don't know.
I mean, it would be really nice if I could for me, what I would get out of it personally is to have a so I can have summaries of what was said that can remind me and also make it some things more understandable to me. That would be cool.
Yeah,
What could come out of it?
Actually, a question that makes me think that there could be a feedback system here, because so we feed what we have into the AI, and then we ask questions, and then we see where it's lacking in depth or knowledge, right? And then we can plan for a discussion just around that topic and feed it back into the AI.
We could also ask questions like we could even formalize our roles here and say, like, one thing I would ask it, what is my contribution to these conversations? Like, what do I add to this conversation? And then that can like formalize my role in the thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So we can take what we do and formalize some of these things.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of what people call collaborative AI. When you don't just rely on AI because as a black box, whatever people put into it, whatever Google put into it, whatever, collaborative in the sense that we create a body of knowledge and a vision, and we tweak it, right? We feed more into it if we feel that is not representative enough of what we are, in some sense.
We could also ask it things like, hey, listen to our conversations. What do you think we could best do together? And the answers that it gives, like, what could this group actually do? Give us like 20 ideas, and it could probably be pretty cool.
Yeah,
because a very large language model could also compare it to other conversations that people are having and tell us how we're unique and what kind of unique knowledge that we have.
So the question is, how much AI driven could this be, and how much collaborative it could be?
Right.
But that's an interesting dimension. Is based on other conversations. How do you cluster us with respect to other conversations? But the other thing is,
we could even feed in. We can remember, because we've come up with models together. Because I remember telling you about my model of collective intelligence in the 4 quadrants. How there's like one dimension of open closed, and the other dimension of like what is it? Oh, coherence. The other dimension is like high coherence or low coherence. And then we could, say, based on our model of collective intelligence, where would you like place our group on this model of collective intelligence, and how could we become more collectively intelligent?
One thing I'd add to that is, I don't know whether the analysis piece gets a bit tricky, because the thing with AI, it will always give you an answer, right? That's the thing it does, but it will just give you an answer. But if you could actually get say the 10 key moments, even if it was like the most salient. One thing it can do, it can go through and it can work out where was there something said and where it was salient, and where's the top 10 things and who said them and what were the main points, right? So at least you could go in and look at it and you say, okay, and then if you could click and it says, okay, and this is interesting, you can click and it takes you straight to that part of the video, and you can say, okay, I can actually listen to that. But the actual qualitative, like how relevant it is and how much it contributes to something bigger, I think that's where you'll get an answer. But unless you've got something, a very generic kind of metric, I think it can be dangerous to start letting the AI, because again, it'll give you an answer, but it sounds more convincing than the actual intelligence is, if that makes sense, in terms of what that really means, because it can't do embodied positional awareness. It doesn't have that. It literally just predicts what word comes next and what it seems to relate to in terms of the literature that it's been fed. It's purely, it has no embodied sense of self or sense of being or sense of, it's just basically whatever it thinks makes sense based on whatever particular literature it's referencing, right? It's literally going through.
Well, we can use that to our advantage, can we not? And say, which places in our conversations was this unique that you don't find in a larger language model where we're actually creating something that is not found elsewhere in other conversations?
That could be a thing. You could say, name the 10 most salient, because salient's good because it can literally go through and it'll listen and say how, basically if I'm going, hi, and just hold on a sec, I'm thinking about it, and then I start now, and then I talk, just like you are, it will go to that chunk, right? So that's the salience piece. And then, it could say, it could be a way of adding that, and you could say, okay, put a little, because you want to have it short and sweet. I mean, one thing we did do once when I was doing our initial workshops for our disability project is at the end of the workshop, like the 2-hour workshop, we had to do a 10-minute video summary, if that makes sense. And that was actually videoed by a videographer to sort of capture the key points that we talked about. And in some ways, there may also be that benefit going forward is like, say as we do our thing, maybe there's like, okay, how would we surmise what we think the main points were from the last hour? You know what I mean? And have that as an end. And then the AI could take us through. And then, you could do what you said. You say that for that chunk, rather than trying to take the whole thing and sort of taking all, I don't think AI could do that, but it could take one chunk and it could just say, with the in and out point, the key text, and then maybe, like you just said there, what were the key points made, and which of those, you could do it 2 ways. You could say which of those seems most connected to the, I don't know if it can do this because I don't think it's able to do this, but it could be what's connected to other stuff that we've already talked about. Does that make sense? Because basically the way those language models work is they get fed data and then it sort of interrogates that, right? So obviously it's not being trained with our conversation, but it kind of learns the context to some extent when it does its interrogation. So it could both say what's interesting, but it could be like interesting for who. That's the thing. Unless we say maybe what would be most interesting. This is one way. Which would be most interesting to Nora Bateson? Which would be most interesting to? So you could do that, and then it would look through the literature on Nora Bateson-y type work, and then do that. Go on, sorry. You were going to say something.
Yeah, we're here to hear you, Pauline.
Oh, me?
Yeah, I sorry, because you were about to say something, and I.
Oh, there's also there's a software, I can't remember the name, but you can actually run your videos through, and it can tell you, it cuts up your videos and makes like little pieces for TikTok or whatever, and it helps you decide these are the parts of the conversation that are actually the most viral and that people would actually appreciate the most and that are most unique. So
That's
there is
Fireflies does that.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, I have a paid pro subscription. I can experiment with something.
Ah.
But I think of Fireflies as a note-taking app.
It also has the functionality for sound bites.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
But I don't know how much it is connected. I have a feeling working with it. I have a feeling that it is like trapped in the text. It doesn't really go and compare what you say with something else. It just like sticks to the transcript. But I think it can actually detect some interesting parts of the discussion.
Yeah, Chibi, would it be nice for you to describe, to share with Claudine, because Stefan knows this, how we have been using, you particularly, have been using, I don't know if it's Fireflies that you've been using, but I think it's to doing the transcription of the workshops, the IOPA Sensorica workshops, right? And how you've been using artificial intelligence in this, the large language models with this context. I don't know if Claudine is aware of that.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. I think there's another part in these reports that we haven't implemented yet, but it just takes the conversation and extracts the transcript, and then we have, for every topic that we discuss, we have designed questions, and then we ask the same questions for every topic, and then we take these answers. Instead of going and listening again to the whole conversation, we take these answers and we plot them on a diagram. And that diagram is sort of a hack. It's not very detailed, but so this has a particular use, which is to understand material commons-based reproduction. So the way we try to model it is to say this is an ecosystem. Commons-based reproduction is an ecosystem, and then every organization is like a living organism in this ecosystem. And the ecosystem also could be thought about as a living organism. So the idea here is that material commons-based reproduction evolves. So like every living system, it evolves. It lives in a certain environment, a larger environment, which is the global economy. Okay, so it interfaces with capitalism and socialism in some countries, but it's so it's there, right? And it tries to adapt. It tries to build bridges, find a niche, develop its capabilities, and so you have these two theoretical frameworks, right? You have living systems and an ecosystem, and the diagram represents that. Okay, it's a hack. It's a way to represent these two together. How do you merge these two theoretical frameworks together? Okay, so
yeah, it's an allegory or a metaphor.
Yeah, so yeah, Stefan calls that a conceptual diagram, a way to categorize things, which is okay. So we ask a battery of questions to the AI, take the answers, plot them against this thing, and then we look at the diagram with the answers, and we try to synthesize everything based on these diagrams. For example, we say that there was a problem that was expressed by some actors in commons-based reproduction in these terms. That's the problem. The question for the AI is, what are the problems that were expressed during this meeting? Okay, so we plot the problems, and then we say, what are the solutions that were proposed? And we plot those two, solutions and problems, and then we connect them with arrows together on the diagram. And the adaptation of the system is to say that it has at the center the ecosystem model, meaning there's like a DNA, how the living organism sees the world and how it produces responses to stimuli. So a stimulus from the environment could be perceived as a problem by the living system. You know, it's like, oh, it's getting too hot here. I'm going to produce a result. So there is a gene coding for that kind of stuff in the DNA, and the cell produces some, there's some mechanisms that kick in and produce a response to that, so that the living system can adapt to the higher temperature. So it's a problem solution kind of, dialectic, like Stefan calls it. Okay, so you have a cell in an environment. There is some events happening in the world. The cell senses that. It may sense it as a problem, and then it produces a response. And our question is, are these responses, which are the solutions to problems, appropriate? Could we extrapolate for other type of solutions? So the reasoning is done based on the diagram. The AI is used to extract statements of problems and solutions from the discussion without having to do that by hand. And so you just copy paste it saves a lot of time. You have like a 2.5-hour discussion, and you just copy paste the answers into Firefly, and it gives you the question and gives you the answers, and you just put them in the text. So that's like a 15 minutes job. And then you copy paste these answers. You reformulate these answers and solutions just to make like shorter phrases, and then you copy paste them into the diagram, which has the model of living systems and ecosystems. And then we as humans do the reasoning. And then what would be interesting to do now is to go to a more open AI system to say, can you, from this summary, can you infer some other things that have not been expressed by the participants in this discussion? And maybe it goes out there and reads the literature and brings in external stuff. So this is how you can sort of invite some dead individual into the discussion, right?
Chibi, just a quick in and out.
We can't hear you well, Vinny. It makes that noise, background noise.
Was better?
Yeah, maybe.
Is it better now? I don't know. Is it better now?
Yes, much better.
Yeah. So just a quick in and out. You see, Lauren, all this reasoning of the framework that Chibi just shared is really incredible. But we are doing this for the workshop dynamics, right? We're doing this for the workshop. We did, unless I'm wrong, TB, we did three workshops for now.
Yeah, three. Yes. Two are mature reports, and the third one is coming along.
But you see, until now, this framing is something that is coming from a network dynamics from Sensorica, right? From the open network dynamics of Sensorica. And I don't know if Chibi knows, or if at least I don't know, and I think that Stefan doesn't know how much of it the IOPA people are understanding the take of it. Like they understand what is the work that we're doing here, right? Using this metaphor, using this metaphor to generate awareness of how an organization has in itself potential to be more organic, more interactive, more open, right? Understanding that the peer-to-peer dynamics, the commons peer-to-peer production way, has in itself the potentiality to unleash that, right? So that's the first thing that we still I don't know if Chibi knows, but I think that we still don't know if IOPA, the IOPA part of this experimentation is aware about it. And then there's the projects and organizations that we invite. So we don't have the proper time to explain all of these things, and mostly TB and Stefan, some of me too, and this dynamics. We try to craft a way to make these guys that we invited to be part of the workshop to understand what we want to do during the workshop, right? And we still don't really. We feel sometimes that some folks understands, some folks really grasps it, and others really don't. They really still, they remain in their, you know, their own tunnel vision, their organizational framework or something like that. But it's a very interesting way to dealt with the challenge to do what IOPA is seeking to do, right? And I think that it informs a lot what we could do here, you know, next year. So I'm just adding to be my understanding and perspective of how this experience has been so interesting in so many levels and dimensions. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing there with what you're saying is that we've been talking about, you know, bringing in some of these conceptual understandings that we've got about different areas of work, and then we've got this idea of capturing some of the ideas and frameworks that have come up, maybe using that. There's also the synthesizing through actually through like the map of meaningful life, or synthesizing through like actually have it so that we set it up so we can do, maybe even we can do you can't really do a constellation. That is a bit, well, you can if you use coins or something, or you do something with video camera, like basically a way where we actually have a sense of like some ways that don't have to be that long, but ways to synthesize what we find meaningful in our own sort of way, right? That can just capture something at a kind of a, not necessarily full into infusion space, but something which maybe that which is a bit like that's a particular journey into something, but it can be more broad. The map of meaningful life is one of the quite useful ones. It explores different aspects of what was meaningful in a dynamic at a certain scale, be it the team, be it an individual, be it someone's life, be it their work, and you choose what that is, right? And I'm really, really excited by that. I'm talking to the Map of Meaning International. I'm even looking at, you know, what's even doing evaluation of our own stuff. Maybe we could do something like our own. You've got something called a developmental evaluation, which is like you basically, what's the developments and learnings that have happened over time? And there's a new one called principles focused evaluation. What are some of the principles? And there may be a different one. There's the principles of hosting, which I think Lauren's talking about. There might be the principles of how to connect and have the dialectic, which is more what Tiberius is talking about. There's the principles of how does someone jump off into infusion space, and maybe the principles that you're talking about, Vinicius, is a bit more the principles of bringing that into a Tao Dao, and where you're trying to broaden that. You know, there might be different principles, but there might be sort of because an evaluation is a kind of a research, but it's more, you know, and that might be, that would then synthesize something quite useful, I think. And it might be better to have a couple of different threads, because the trouble is you try and do everything together. Well, it's very different, right? The hosting is different to the dialectic or whatever that's going to be, right? They're not, you know, and whoever comes in the space, we can orientate them more or less. And if we do have the ability to break out, or like you could have different spaces where we do different kind of conversations. That's one of the things I'm kind of looking at is like in Gather, you know, literally you can be in the same room in Gather, but you've got different tables that you can walk on, right? And you basically, you can talk to only people around that table. So it could be like you have a table which is more...
Tables loading, tables loading, tables loading.
Yes, get the tables. So you could have the table that's all decorated and it's like, welcome here. We could even have like, bring your own cup of tea in. I did that actually with a workshop with Imagine Action, where everyone had to bring a cup of tea in that day and show us. Everyone, like, you know, you basically display like you literally bring your drink in and you display it. And, you know, it could be something. And then there could be another table, which is like, okay, that's the one which has got links to Miro boards and all of that sort of stuff, right? So you literally walk over there, and not everyone has to walk over there, right? It might be that some stuff is just not as relevant for certain people. I don't know, you know, and that takes a bit of the pressure off, because, you know, we are from a slightly diverse, you know, we're able to bridge more or less, but there's obviously some stuff which is a bit more or less out in our area, right? But maybe some people who come on board, certainly initially, it may be a step too far, right, to jump around. So it's like, okay, what would you like to have happen if you use clean language and for this to be at its best? And then you can say, and we have some options. And to be honest with you, how to do that and to make that work, I think in terms of hosting, Vinicius and Lauren, you're probably you're very good at that side of things in terms of like, you think about that a lot. So I think that might be a real... I sort of think about these kind of slightly psychedelic spaces that people jump into for a while. But that's got to be set up in a certain way, right? Otherwise people are like, what the hell why am I here, right? But if you host it right, then at least people, they can decide if it's for them, right? There's a difference between something being unknown and finding stuff and something just being confusing. And it's like, because they just didn't understand the instructions, and that, I think that's part of and I think that might be where we've got different skill sets in this group around some of those things. Anyway, if that makes sense.
You know, I just thought of something, you know, can you hear me? Are my things still not working? They're okay. All right. You know, with, you know, Paula, who knows like nonviolent communication and clean language and this and that, like all you know, like TB and the unconference methodology and the, you know, the methodology of knowledge and stuff like that. It just seems like we have so many different tables or rooms that we could offer that we know about, that we, you know, we could design like a little kind of clearinghouse for, you know, people to come in, that could be scalable for them to come in. And it's almost like a, you know, an AI powered unconference, where not only could people decide what they want to talk about, but then they could have lifetime facilitation to help them run the conversation that they want to have on the topic that they want to have it on. So like, example, like what can we do with clean language? Like answer that in just a few words. Like what can we do with clean language? That I'm asking a question, Stephen.
Oh, okay. It's not rhetorical.
No.
Well, it's a lot, to be honest. So you can, but the four main areas are therapy, where it started, and working on coaching. They're using it for research questions or interviews. They call it clean interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's coaching. Yeah, there's therapy, there's coaching. There's the systemic modeling. So like, your organization is like what? So there's four areas they've got it. Yeah, they've got personal and coaching, what's modeling out the system, or working with using it for interviewing, which isn't as clean. So like, there's levels of clean there, because obviously you've got a particular question you want to ask, but you try to make it as clean as possible. So there are 4 areas. So and it can also permeate a little bit. Like there's so like therapy, like if you're doing a therapy session, you contract with the client, right? It's like we're doing therapy. You don't just, you know, you could basically, this is the learning they had in the early days. They went into organizations and they would ask someone, you know, they would talk about stuff, and you know, the person was, and what's your organization like? And the guy would get up and he was saying, and what's happening? What would you like to have happen? I'd like to make this, you know, I'd like to become less stuck. And where do you think you're less stuck? And I think he said, oh, I'm just feel trapped. And where did trap, and when trapped, where did trap come from? And I think the boss was like, well, it's like when I was a kid and these guys were bullying me and I'm stuck behind the desks and and they suddenly realized, wait a sec, that's not where they wanted to go in a business meeting, right? They'd actually gone into therapy, right, by accident. So you sort of pull back and you don't, because they're very powerful, right? You can suddenly go deep. So generally in those contexts, like more business contexts, you only use 3 questions or something like that. Coaching, you know, again, if you're contracted with someone is one thing, but if you're more in an open context, then you can use it. But it can be really useful just to ask cleaner questions, you know, like, so rather than saying, well, for instance, rather than saying, why did you do that? Which they also talk about that in MVC, right? Which is kind of what they call a pregnant question, you know, it's a little bit of like, in the background, there's a little bit because you're an idiot, right? There's a little bit of that sitting there, right? So in clean, they'd ask, where did that come from, or where did that come from, which is not quite as you know, unclean. So that's the kind of ways, if I was to surmise it, and we could bring someone in to just talk about that, but that's kind of clean's options, I suppose, as the field is using it.
Okay, so the point is though that we have different people here who have access to knowledge. Like, you know, I built up a database of like 500,000 words on manipulation strategies and things, behavior that limits conversation and that prevents emergence from happening. So that's something that I have. We have clean language, we have nonviolent communication. All of these methodologies lead to predictable outcomes for different things. So with some effort, we could just formalize some procedures and then be able to, it's I'm trying to get the metaphor out of my head. We can be like a structure. It's almost like in a cartoon or something where we can set up some sort of tent or something for what is needed, almost like the Harry Potter room of requirements.
Pop-up structures.
Yes, exactly. So I think that would be something that something super powerful that we could make with what the knowledge of the people who have come in.
Yeah, and we could make a gather space that sort of works for us as well. We can have our own gather room that we keep moving around a little bit and improving on, and that could help with that. I mean, the only thing I'd say is it's predictably unpredictable. I mean, part of these, some of these methods, their whole thing is that they reveal, and I was going to say this a bit earlier too, is they reveal what's going on from the inside. MVC is a bit like that as well, because MVC kind of is, the thing that I think is revolutionary about MVC is it talks about what state you're in. It's all really on what state you're in, not the language at all. So it's starting with saying that I'm a system and what state am I in, and then it's getting at what that state is. My needs or my wants and my feelings are kind of really about the state of this system from the inside. So when you talk about cybernetics, the cybernetics as in, this is what I think I would program those things to do. And then there's cybernetics in terms of I'm an organism and I'm just in it. Does that make sense? And at some level, you have no perspective on that. You are just in it. You only have a perspective you can never have a perspective on being in it at the time, right? You only have another experience, which is about reflecting, which talks about this experience. And supposedly they match, but they can never really be the same thing, because you're actually having a different experience when you're reflecting on that experience. It's not the same as being in that flow, which is, you know, that's part of the art of it. So I suppose, but you can have, this is why I like the idea of the procedure. And I think this is where you're intuitively, you're going there, but you don't necessarily know it because it's so intuitive, Lauren, is that the where and the nature of the space and the place can be what is the procedure. Like, I like this idea of, like, with a method, the space does the heavy lifting. It's a lot harder to do that online, but it's basically, I think generally women actually have more, well, they're better at this. I'm not very good at how to set up a house, right? I always can't vision it. I don't know why, because I can do all these workshops, but there's that kind of intuitively knowing that if you set it up this way, people will inhabit that way. Does that make sense? There's something about hosting, like you said, when you talked about decorating, you have an inherent implicit understanding of what that means, right? You just have a sense of that, which I don't know, I would struggle with, but I know other people can do that. Like, there's something about that, which is not the same as having a recipe that people have to do 1, 2, 3 necessarily. There's something about that. And also, when I think you have that, Vinicius, when you're kind of welcoming people, you're trying to, I don't know, there's something like, it's alive, right? There's an aliveness, but also there's a sense of setting up the frame, setting up the space, and that's not necessary. I know you said it's predictable, but it's predictable in an unpredictable way. It's not predictable in the way that, you know, what formal meetings are like, and they have an agenda. It's a kind of a different kind of
yeah. I wouldn't go so far as Lauren went about predictability of behavior. I wouldn't go so far when coming to pop-up experiments, because people in pop-up experiments, they are not so armed up with their opinions or their way of thinking. They are more open to exercise something different. So they become more unpredictable. So that's one thing. The other thing is that pop-up experiments, they can generate flow states, and the flow state is very interesting thing, right? The flow state is when you tune in something that it excites your curiosity, and suddenly you don't feel the passing of time, for instance. But the comment that I want to make is something that I have been talking. We've been talking through our RWA touchdowns, loads of many occasions, and it's something that is part of my experiences and explorations, right? Is how these conversations that we're having here is related to the peer-to-peer paradigm. Is extremely related to, and how is not considered in the peer-to-peer paradigm. Like, you know, when we talk about the peer-to-peer paradigm in the commons, we're talking about, you know, peer-to-peer organizations or peer-to-peer networks, having some relationship with the things that TV's talked in the beginning of our session today, or the touchdown today, that is, you know, productivity. But all the things that we're talking here is not being considered, and this is a critique that I have years in the making. Like, I always talk, where is the complexity, guys, around the peer-to-peer paradigm?
Well,
and people don't talk about it. Like,
right.
it doesn't exist.
I tell you, one of the big problems with systems is the closest they think they get into it with systems. Systems are useful, but systems are always defined from the outside. That's the problem in terms of the way systems are generally thought about. But being inside, unless you have this kind of modeling approach, which is actually, and it gets complicated, but it's actually a dynamical, stochastic modeling approach. You could say it's a system, but it is totally different to be modeling cybernetics from inside. And that's why there's this whole thing now. They're even talking about the whole science of the observer. The whole thing is like we just have this idea of a classical observer. We're looking at systems, system, but it's just assumed that you see the same thing I see. It's just out there, right? And that, so it doesn't matter. We just assume we have a classical observer. But both I'm actually generating my interpretations, and the person on the other side, heaven forbid we should ask them. And this is where you end up the same place if you seriously take participation, because generally speaking, you put 10 therapists in the room and it's like, okay, they won't have 10 different ways of finding out what the client thinks. They'll just all converge on their opinion. It's like, well, what about the person? And what about admitting you don't know? Oh no, we can't do that. So basically this inside outside thing is really relevant here to a point. And in some ways we have an experience of being inside. We are participants. Like if we were to run this forward, we are both the organizers and we're kind of participants, just as people who've been inside it, as opposed to what I think AI might say about it, or what I think if I was reflecting on it.
Yeah, but Stefan, there's a bug there. When we say the word participants, the framing that comes for us is, wait a minute, there's a time when I can speak, there's a time that I can, raise my hands. So when we talk about the conception of participation, it seems something like pre-designed,
Yeah.
where you have the time to talk, to vote, to raise your hand, something like that. That's why I always focus on interaction or interagency or interagent, because you explore the space of the in-between space of things. You explore the within space of in myself or related to other. And once more, my good friends, for me, this is related to the peer-to-peer paradigm, but I don't see this out there, right? Like, I really don't see it. And that's where, Lauren, Taudao's experience thrives to, where nothing is preordained, pre-designed. You're not participating. You're opening yourself to interact, to emerge, to see what comes out of it, and that's very discomforting for a lot of folks, for a lot of people, and I can say to you right now, more than 200 people came to the onboard. It's not a good word, okay? Onboarding, because it's not a platform, but came to the onboarding weekly sessions that we do in Taudao. And there's actually 15 or 20 people interacting now. Like, less than 10% of the people feels, related to it. Like, this is something new here to explore. But most people feels uncomfortable. Most of people feels like, where's the organization? How can I participate? Who is leading what? Who is doing what? And, where is the framework organizational framework that I can, see myself in it? Well,
yeah. I think that's really useful.
It's not there. It emerges through interaction as a pop-up experience. And that's something that makes people, wow, this is crazy, man. What are you talking about? I don't have time to do this. I have to pay my bills. Wait a minute. Oh, thanks a lot for being here, to inviting me. But yeah, I don't have time to do this type of chat. Right. So
that's, you know what, that's a really good point, because I try and use this word participation, but when I think participation, I'm thinking really deep group participation in Africa, or really what you're right. The fact that I use that word is not what other people think I mean. I mean, it's like, basically I'm talking about, there's actually, and this is actually also true even in participatory theatre, where you do a play, you do it a second time, they come in. There's something different to participatory theatre, where I as an audience can participate in the play, and immersive theatre, or and actually this other group in London, they call it intimate theatre. And there's something that there's a quality, or there's other people call it contextual drama or site-specific theatre. There's something about which, when I say participate, because I've been having a lot of stress because I feel, and the word community is the same problem, right? You see that? I mean, look, bloody Pornhub uses the term community. Join our community. I mean, it's like,
yeah, the term community.
everywhere.
The term community became a bullshit thing, became a toxic bullshit thing. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
That's
I totally agree
hilarious.
with Floating. It's extremely toxic because it wants to regulate your behavior. It wants in name of the consensus, of the consensus, of the generating consensus. It's ideological in the sense that you have to. There's norms. There's so and they call this a community. Is a disservice for the regional concept of community, right? That is very complex. Is a living organism.
yes.
Is that a living organism?
It's not. Well, I actually did a project with the Centre for Community-Based Research. Like we were doing that and a lot of stuff. And basically, if you really work with community, there is no such thing as the community. Is an oxymoron. Is actually the opposite of what it is. Basically, people say the community. They just basically either mean the organisation or the group, and as defined from the outside. But being belonging within community, a sense of community, a community engagement in a verbal form, which you can't nail down, but a sense of community, I can have a sense of that. That's a dynamic that can own. My sense of community can't be imposed from the outside. It comes from the sense of belonging, the sense of inner generated stuff. And I belong to many different collective communities. And like you say, but as soon as it gets used as a noun, it's a thing. And the thing, even if I'm in it, I can only see it from, it's only as if I look at myself in it. Because how do I do that? I have to disembody.
Yeah, it is ridiculous, this role of community builder, right? It's totally ridiculous.
An action.
How come that one is a community builder, right? Like,
Yes.
oh,
well, I'm actually on the board. I'm on the board of the Centre for Community-Based Research, and it was interesting because they went to Rwanda to talk about stuff, and they said they wanted peace. They were calling it peace building, and the people in Rwanda said, "Well, it's kind of this. It's a very colonial idea that I'm coming in and who's building the community and what are you building with, as opposed to they said about peace finding, like there's peace around us, but we find it. But again, you can't do that with expertise. That requires genuine, maybe." I should say genuine. I mean, it's very hard to know what word to use, but not participation there. But maybe genuine engagement is maybe the word they're using, and that doesn't just mean we all turn up. Like the participation is sometimes just like we turn up, right? But there's all sorts of words for that. Like I can be an audience, I can be an attendee, I can be but I think we have to somehow, maybe that's why I use the term sociodrama topography rather than map. Because map is also basically, most maps are basically a diagram. They haven't even got, so like to go the other way. And in some ways, but the risk is that it sounds too out there. I don't know. But if you don't, you end up with the other problem that people just put in their meaning. Like you just say, I mean, somehow maybe we have to define a bit more boldly. I mean, constellations is a bit like that. They're trying to do that. Like the term constellation is a different thing to, it's trying to speak about the fact that people are relating in a different way, and that they do, like maybe there's something in that we is really important, and I think also it looks different from different places.
Yeah,
we need to know what that might look like.
But that's exactly it, Stefan. Just for us to finish here, guys, because we're all over more than 2 hours than we're here, but we're excited to talk about this. And that's a good thing, right? So, and it's interactive. I feel that we're in an interactive flow here, and that's very good. Is that the most challenging things for us as a species is to dealt with changes, right? And we in the type of society that we became, we tend to conceptualize change. Conceptualize change. This is a very crazy thing that we do. Like, oh, change is when you change from where you live, you go to another place to live, or change is when you change your job, you go to another company to work, or change is when you change your clothes. Like I bought new clothes, so I change. And change is something that happens 24/7 in a regenerative way. Like your skin dies every day and lives another. So change is happening all the time, and we have difficulties to deal with it, right? And in my way of seeing and living and exploring things, the only way that we can deal with change is when we don't conceptualize it first. So if you don't conceptualize it first, you just open yourself, without because when we conceptualize, we generate expectations, right? We generate expectations. So in order for us to dealt with changing dynamics, it's good when we don't generate expectations about what is going to change, or you just open yourself to flow within, or flow in between, or openness. This is something extremely delicate, or not sophisticated, but extremely. It's like the threshold between the caterpillar and the butterfly. You see, it's like you're not a caterpillar and you're not a butterfly. You're in that liminal and within space of everything is possible, and you're just open yourself to go with the flow, and and when that happens, you don't want to control the experience. The thing is that we are so fed up to be we are so fed up to be fed up to control things, to be a control person, control human thing, that we tend to do this all the time, to pre-conceptualize and to generate expectations. So when you do that, you're actually going against the possibility to change, and the type of changing that happens becomes something without grounding, without real grounding for your feet, right? Like you're just stepping on eggshells. Like yeah, we made something together. We made a huge change, but you don't feel it. You don't really feel it like it's a huge change. It's something just performatic. You're just performing change. You're not living change. You're performing it, but you're not living it. Like really, you're not living it. So that's it, basically. And that for me is the most relevant thing that we can do as a species. And it's so challenging, for everybody to just live that, let it live and let it live, without preconceptualizing, creating expectations, wanting to control and plan every step of the way. So yeah, I just want to ask you guys if did we generate some common ground here for what we can, just for us to wrap up things here, to what we can explore for 2024, and do we have, what type of work do we have to do together in order to make that happen in 2024?
Can we pass this to TV?
Oh,
If you're
I don't know.
Phoebe.
I don't know. Yeah, I do think that the way you set the tone, Vinny, in the beginning led us to some thoughts about what we've done and what we can do next, what are the new possibilities. So I think we nailed that. It feels like an end of the year discussion, you know, the like Vinny called it, like the wrap up of 2023, reimagining world gatherings. I don't know. I don't want to sound like somebody that drives the agenda here. When it comes to myself, I could experience with our transcripts. I have most of the videos. I think most of the recordings. I can pass the text through Fireflies and see what we can get out of it. Just like some experimentation. Since I'm paying for this subscription, it cost me like $80 a month, so might as well get something out
Yeah,
of it.
let's do it. Let's do it. I'd love to review that. Like, what does the AI say is the most salient?
I can invite. I think I can invite a few people to it. My sim is already working with me there, so he has access to work on these transcripts, ask questions, and yeah. I don't know what is the maximum amount of people that could be part of this subscription, but I'll check it out. I never played with a personal ChatGPT where you train the AI to you specialize it on something. I don't know. You feed it some. I never played with that. Some people are starting to play. Alain, who is oh yeah, that's another thing. Alain, who is co-organizing these monthly events at the lab. He uses that. He uses he has a practice of interviewing people. The topic is the new world, and so interviewed Michel Bounds, all kinds of people that are actually doing something. They're immersed in this transition, and so he fed the content to the person's AI called Sophia. I don't know if that's a generic name or that's the name he gave, and then he can ask questions to the AI about the what was said. So I can bring him into the conversation maybe next time, and we see what we learn from him. The problem is that if you want to interact with the system, you have to have a paid subscription. I think like the minimum, I think it's like $8 per month, just to be able to interact with that. So it doesn't open to the public, right? You can't just put that on the website and everybody can ask questions. I don't know if for them it's a sort of a way to kick out bots and just I don't know, but yeah. So okay, so on my table, maybe it's two things. Pass some of these transcripts to Fireflies. Maybe try to extract some sound bites, see how well it does. And the way I see it here is that all these little pieces, these how do we call it, like a secondary content, could be used as fishing lines, hooks to bring people into the fold. So you spread out some sound bites. People find that interesting, and they get interested to what we're doing. So that leads me to think about where are they coming. So maybe that's a question for Lauren to say what kind of space we can provide so that they could start interacting or doing something.
Yeah, we could call to in 2024, instead of calling Reimagining Wealth Initiative, we could call it Practicing Wealth Experience or Practicing Wealth uh,
Mhm.
exploration. I don't know. I'm just wondering here. I know.
Yeah, that's
it's
that's
simple.
another leap forward. Yeah, that's another leap forward. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I'm just
It doesn't mean to
I
stop
mean,
imagining, but
yeah, I'm just doing the Vinicius thing here, expanding.
Mhm.
So
just, something that I focused on for a long time, and something that resonated well when I talked about it within this is like when you're conceptualizing wealth, as in going deep inside yourself and actually mining your own wealth and being able to share that in a community. um that could be the 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 foundation of what we're doing, might be to create more collective intelligence through each person being able to contribute more of their wealth to the community, and then for that to increase the community wealth. So one thing about being able to contribute your wealth, first you have to understand the ikigai of like where what you do intersects with the other people, like what is your particular wealth that you bring, and how can we build a permission space where people feel comfortable contributing their wealth, and where people define what pools of wealth we have. Hello?
yeah, so that's like practicing, right? That's more like
yeah,
practicing as well.
yeah, totally. We could call it regenerating wealth experience, regenerating, right? Because we already done a lot of reimagining. Now we can go to regenerating wealth experience and go to the practice of it, and not only bring up our experimentations, explorations, and things that we're living, but actually when people comes, uh, we can, yeah, we literally can offer this very cozy and like you like to put it, loading, very cozy and at the same time paradoxical space to explore, but without not generating any type of expectation to it, like just being just being and let it be, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Well, this is, I mean, if you're interested in exploring, I've got a GatherTown license. I've got a non-profit license, so I can use that. And I've built a load of spaces. I'm actually talking to space makers in Prague, who design bespoke spaces for companies. They even did one for Electronic Arts in Vancouver for their Christmas party. So they do some really quite interesting stuff, and they use it for, they're trying to Gather's trying to get into the idea that people actually use it for their offices, right? And that people actually have desks and they can do stuff. So that could be really cool, because I value some input on that as well, because I'm trying to, yeah, there's no standard way of doing it, right? It's got to be, it's like a brief. You need to work out what might work and why and how to get there. And I think that this sort of stuff, I think it'd be really interesting. And like I say, I've got the technical stuff, I've got Photoshop and stuff like that. So you can build well, if it gets more complex, I'd have to speak to someone like Space Makers, right? Because they actually use Blender. They use Blender 3D modeling to build theirs and stuff like that. But just generally to get something together, that'd be really cool. And if anyone else is, and the main thing I take from today, and I think it was really useful, it brought back this idea of concepts and perceptions, and Malcolm, Malcolm McLuhan talked about that. We have a lot of conceptual ideas, and then we fit all our perceptions into that. But the thing is, that's assuming, and this is a very colonial, monocultural way, is that assume that everyone would fit to that concept, But we can have different concepts, and actually, that's one of the joys of clean language, is we can say just what's our metaphor for what that's like. I mean, our concepts have basically got a metaphor, and we we can embrace different ways of what is that like, even our concepts, you know. And I think that's it's good from both sides to and also say sometimes they're just different, you know, and not have to ram everything into one framework, even in some implicit way. It's like, okay, but maybe this, you know, and I'm very much into that, and I'm not sure how to answer that, but you know, if anyone's up for like helping with GatherTown, I'd appreciate the help.
I absolutely would, because that's what I'm interested in, is how can we create the space? What are the cues that we need to get people in? And I'm with you of not having one framework, but having lots of different frameworks. And that's what the rooms and spaces are. Like, you know, if I'm having a party, if I ply people with good food and alcohol and then set out finger puppets in front of them, like, I kind of know what's going to happen. It's, you know, like there's predictability in the setup, and you know, and that's going to be a different kind of party than one when there's a tea room with scones.
Yeah,
You see what I'm
that's
saying?
true. Yeah, that'd be great. No, if you're into that, and it's also different if you know, if the party was with a group of priests versus a group of, like, you know, obviously they might different people, but there'd be something. It's predictable and it's also unpredictable. There's a certain element of like in spontaneity, you know what I mean, in all of that. Or like if it's I don't know, if it's a wake after a funeral, it could be kind of interesting, you know. So but right,
let me just share something in there, Lori. I totally got, you know that I know that what you're saying, we're talking about, because we have talked about this a lot, and I just want to put some pepper there. Like in a typical Brazilian party, there's no setup, there's no different rooms. The place itself doesn't really count. So the people go without any type of expectation to it, and what pops up there, and it pops up in different, all sorts of different ways, and it can pop up between, you know, 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, 100. It can move between 2 people to 200 people. Like everybody is in the mood now. Only 2 are in the mood. There's different moods happening all over. So this is typical from the Brazilian culture, and that is very movable. It's very reconfigurable. It's very interactive. It changes all the time. That's why Taodao works beautifully here. So like because it changes all the time. But once more,
it's like fermentation. Like if you try to do Taodao in Germany, you need like a little bit of a starter. You need some like sourdough starter, because things aren't going to ferment the same way in Germany, because you don't have the environment. So you need social cues and norm setting to make it ferment like Taodao can ferment.
Yeah, that's
Actually,
an interesting metaphor.
It could be really cool actually to, like, if we have a space, it's okay, you maybe have a sort of a starting space. You say, okay, this one's more Brazilian. You can just tweak it. You can copy rooms, right? You can say, okay, today we can have like different, like, rather than saying whether it's Brazilian, that becomes very, but maybe there's more of this quality, and then there's some sort of continuum, you know. This one's got a bit more, I don't even know what that would be. This one's a bit more, you know, this one's more of a starting space with more instructions, and then this one is more of a space where it's just design, you know, and then we just move the furniture. Maybe one room has more signage in and stuff like that and a few more prompts, and the other one is more open. And I mean, that's me trying to run before walking. But that'd be kind of interesting, because there is that's the thing, is something, the big thing that's thrown psychology is, as soon as they started bringing in any cross-cultural psychology, everything exploded, because all these things work when you've got an assumption that it's kind of like what happens for white male psychology students that all the tests was being done on, right? And it's like, and it is, and it's not wrong, but then you find, but it's not quite like that. and that becomes a whole different conversation. But that could be quite fun, because it also could be even more fun for the German to be in the Brazilian world and the Brazilian to be in the German world for a while. You know, it's not, you know, it's good stuff.
But you can't just. So what I'm
he's actually right. Like
saying,
there's a attraction
Vinny, is that you
for
can't.
what? No, there's attraction for. You're actually right, Stefan. There's an attraction here among Brazilians for more structural, organized things, because the culture is so fluidic, so emergent, so unpredictable, that the experience of something more organized, it seems like a whole new world, you know? Yeah, and you're actually right on that. You're spot on.
Yeah, also, how do you get the Brazilian without the Brazilians and without the plants and without the heat? And you have a lot of cues and the food. And so you have like lots of cues that make something Brazilian that gives that predictable unpredictability that in Germany you can manufacture it, but you have to have different environmental cues in order to do that.
Definitely. And maybe the ability to tweak it on the fly. I mean, that's also that spontaneous. I mean, that's hard online, but there's a lot of ability to do stuff like, we haven't really explored this much, but you know, we have a room, we have a place, you know, we might be able to like literally, I've got a spare camera, right? We could have one camera where we decide what tea, and okay, say like what flavor tea would we like to bring in today, and you usually have a camera on that, and that sets the scene. We actually did that. I did that with Imagine Action. It was quite interesting. Like, could be something where, like, I don't know if you've got another camera, but maybe you could bring in a Brazilian dish one time, or a Brazilian pastry with a coffee, and it just gives something, and that would be on video. But you know, it's kind of interesting. So
yeah, we actually did something like that, Stefan. When I show the kitchen here that I live in, and do some very organic, you know, foods, and we already done something within us here in this sense. But yeah, it can be part of this new framing that we're talking here about. So folks, I think that we if we don't stop here, we won't stop, because we're excited, and we will just go on and on and on. So just to wrap up and do a type of checkout, and just put it out how you felt this, and if we already have the common ground to actually work on it, and start up new in the new year. So, Maureen?
Thanks, guys. This is a great session. Thank
you as well. Yes, lots to chew on with my Christmas pudding. Hopefully I get one from England. I normally get one in the post, but I don't know, they're kind of heavy. No, thanks Vinicius, for your continued forward motion that keeps that positivity. I think that's great. I think that's really helpful.
Chibi!
Right. Bye, everyone.
Say something.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very exciting. I just unmuted myself. Thank you. Very good.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks, Lauren.
Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.